I'm not joking when I say Tottenham have signed one of the best number 10 prospects in the world in Xavi Simons. How have we fallen upwards to the point where we've signed the best option on the market with 3 days left to go in the window? Forget Gibbs-White, forget Eze. This is the man to get excited about. Both of those two would have moved the needle. They would have been really good signings. But Simons, with his age, with the star quality that he's got, that's going to add to this team over hopefully a very long period of time, right now in his continual developmental years as well as his peak years, get excited. And in this video, we're going to break down exactly why he is a great fit for Spurs and why it's such a big signing. Got loads of examples of stuff to go through. We're going to break it down in terms of how he fits in, different styles of play under Thomas Frank as well, how he can help us in different game states and setups. But first of all, before we get into that, thank you so much for all the support on YouTube recently. Darren and doing podcasts as well, FC Bottle Job, all that good stuff. I'm very close to 15,000 subscribers on YouTube and 100,000 followers on TikTok. So I'd be massively grateful if you could hit the subscribe button on this video and also head into the link in the description and head over to my TikTok page and get me to that magic number over there. It's an excellent end to what has been a turbulent transfer window, and hopefully Spurs still have more to do. So Xavi Simons, 22 years old, 7-year contract, about to be announced and probably will be announced by the time you're watching this video. £51 million transfer fee represents insane value in this market when you think about some of the players that have moved for more significant fees than that. It's obviously an expensive package in terms of his wages, but if you want superstars at your club and you've got the face of the franchise and Son Heung-min going out on 200 grand a week wages, you want to replace that with someone who just adds so much to this team and can become the face. Xavi Simons is such an interesting player, right? Obviously had such an excellent footballing education at Barcelona, come up through La Masia, obviously went on loan, obviously went to PSG, went on loan to PSV, PSG then loaned him back to Leipzig, was bought by Leipzig. It feels like he's made the right sort of decision for the development of his career at every sort of turn, and it feels like this is the best one for him again when you think about how much game time he's going to get compared to Chelsea. And look, Chelsea didn't come in with that bid in the end. That's part of the reason why that deal again didn't get done, but he's at the right place because we needed him the most. And I think one of the reasons that I was reading an Athletic article about this, one of the reasons that Xavi Simons didn't get the move earlier on in the window to some other teams is that he was a bit of an awkward fit. Not many teams play with like pure number 10s anymore. Tottenham were crying out for that. We maybe should have tried to get this deal done earlier, and we could have had him in a pre-season, but who cares when we've landed on this now, a top talent who offers so much. So let's run through some examples before we talk about the setup. Xavi Simons is so versatile, can play on that last line, can get so close to the striker, but can also drop deep into these kind of pockets as well to help build play. When you look at his data and statistics compared to our other two key transfer targets in that position, in terms of his ball carrying ability and his dribbling ability, he's better than both of those as well. He's as creative as well in the final third, but also his carrying ability over a long distance. And that kind of versatility and that all-round game, all-action number 10 is exactly what Thomas Frank is looking for. And in that versatility, like I said, you've got someone here who can play on that last line and can receive when Leipzig turn the ball over in that middle third of the pitch. Receives the ball, wants to drive inside. This is excellent from Simons here, and it sums up what he's all about, right? It's a 3-on-3 situation. He's got Openda and he's got Sesko up with him. And you look at this little drop of the shoulder here. If I can just get a bit of a zoom in on that. If you look at kind of the finer details, that little drop of the shoulder that completely unbalances I think it's Xhaka. Is that Xhaka? Completely unbalances the midfielder, goes past him, and the finish on this strike is just absolutely outrageous. But that, in terms of his ball carrying ability over long distances, he wants to receive it on the turn and drive, is such a massive part of his game, as well as all of the creative, beautiful stuff in and around the box as well. In terms of his goal scoring threat, now if we look at his stats over the last couple of seasons, 1 goal, 1 assist in 2 games so far for Leipzig, 11 goals and 8 assists last season, 10 goals and 13 in his season before that, and then 22 goals where he was the top scorer, I think, in the Eredivisie in that loan period at PSV Eindhoven, 11 assists. So he's essentially hitting double-digit goals and assists every single season, and that output is obviously something that's going to be massively important when you think about the goals that have left Tottenham with the injuries and the departures of Son, Maddison, Kulusevski, etc. And a lot of them come from excellent strikes in and around the box, but also a lot of them come in situations like this where he's arriving late into the box. If I just get a better little draw on him there. He wants to get into here. I don't know why that's so thick. Let me just turn that down a little bit. He wants to get into the box when Leipzig are building up. Little run into the channel there, cut back, and he's in that space, ready to get onto the cross and heads it into the back of the net. Arriving late in the box is all good number 10s can do, which is, a feature when in kind of open games, but also when you're trying to break down low blocks. And again, I do feel like we've made such an excellent signing that can kind of give us so much in all game states, which Simons is something that I spoke about Gibbs White at the time. And I think Simons offers you that so much as well in terms of unpicking a lock, but also in terms of when games are open, his decision-making in around the final third. But there, crashing the box, getting in, scoring header goals. This here, you can see in terms of his defensive contribution, getting back to help double up there on Michael Elise. Leipzig, but when they do turn the ball over here, look at this. His speed of thought, his decision-making here. Leipzig wanted to get forward. It's this ball with the outside of his boot is excellent. It's such a consistent feature in his game. We see it with James Maddison as well. That ability to kind of make things happen from all angles under pressure to get that ball out quickly to Sesko makes that run in the channel and scores one of the best goals that we saw last season. Again here, you see these kind of late runs into the box. You can see this little dummy from Simons here onto Poulsen, feeds it back to him, cushions it on the knee, and that strike into the corner is excellent. Brilliant, brilliant goal. His ball striking is so clean. His shooting technique is so good. And again, when you are trying to break teams down, that someone that, I know this is in more of a transitional situation, but when you've got such a clean ball striker who is brave enough to take regular shots on from outside the box, that is how you're going to open up games a lot of the time. And he's got that magic and got that kind of confidence to do that. This is a goal that I absolutely love. We're kind of just going through some of his goals and assists here to start off. Throwing for Leipzig on this left-hand side. Xavi Simons kind of peels out to this left. You can see here, if I just zoom in, he's already aware. He already knows what he wants to do before it happens. He's looking into that space. He's waiting for a Pender, who's here, to kind of make that little dart so Simons can make his move. And as soon as that throw-in comes in, he wants to get into this space here. He wants to get into that space. He's kind of seeing everything before it happens. That game intelligence is so good here. And he moves into the space and then he can drive into it. Pender, it's such a good header. And then Simons has got a clean run. And again, when you think about his shooting technique, just curls that beautifully into the corner. But again, me and Kish were just recording a podcast. Kish Lead White Lab, make sure to go subscribe, follow him. And Kish made a really good point about the disguise on his shots a lot of the time as well. You see it, and I've got other examples of where what Simons will do is look like he's going to bend the ball into that corner, but actually he'll go across the goalkeeper into that corner as well. In these kind of situations, he's such a deadly finisher, and that unpredictability in his game in terms of his shooting and all the other stuff that he wants to do as well makes him so hard to stop. Such an excellent finish. Here is one of my favourite examples of why I think he can be so effective at Tottenham, and what, despite all of his excellent ball carrying stats, if we go back onto this tab here, clears Eze and Gibbs White in terms of that ability to get you up the pitch, thrives in transitional situations. Where you want Simons as well is in this little pocket. Now, if we kind of get this little zone sort of drawn up here, you've got the centre half, there's another centre half there, midfield, and then two midfielders. And you've got Xavi Simons right in the middle of that sort of space. Now, one thing that slightly does concern me is the lack of ball progression in our midfield to kind of find Simons in these little pockets. But when you've got Romero who likes to step up and be aggressive, be as aggressive as he is and punch balls through the lines, I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue. But you want Simons in and around this kind of zone where you can feed the ball to him and he can turn and instantly take players out of the game, receives the ball on the half turn and then can drive. Again, that progressive carrying ability. Draws players in. If we go to some of the stats here in terms of, again, multiple reasons why he's going to be so effective at Tottenham, he ranks in that top 1 percentile for fouls drawn that lead to shot creating action. So whether that's free kicks in the final third as well. But because of his ability to embrace physical contact and ride the challenge and using that low centre of gravity, he loves to draw players in so he can maximise and burst into the space that is left because players get so tight to him. But also it will often lead in a foul. Like if we kind of zoom in here, right? Obviously, he's very close to clipping him there on the edge of the box and bringing him down. Then Leipzig have got free kick in such a dangerous position where they can shoot a goal. But because of the speed in which he does everything, that dribbling ability, that low centre of gravity, he's able to wriggle away from these players a lot of the time as well. Again, takes two players out the game here, and then he wants to drive into that space. And because of that hard work, because of that ability to get away from players so quickly, players are panicking whenever he gets the ball. He's just able to drive into that space and finish it so well. Again, here you're seeing his ball carrying ability over longer distances. Again, you're seeing that outside of the foot pass, just that cushioned pass round the corner for Sesko. So intelligent. Sesko scores a lovely goal here. Lovely, lovely finish. When I'm talking about riding physical contacts and that ability to play in tight spaces, I think that's one of his biggest strengths. I'm also using the JLA Tactics board as well here. Good to mention, links in the description if you want to go check that out. He embraces it so much, and that is what's so special about these kind of players, right? I think naturally, and I understand it. I think some people are going to be sceptical about his physicality, despite the fact that he's actually taller than Eze and Gibbs White. But I think when you look at Simons, he's got that low centre of gravity. His frame is a little bit different. So maybe you would think that he would struggle with the physicality of the Premier League. I think the bigger thing that sometimes players struggle with is the intensity, but I also think Bundesliga is a very intense league in terms of how transitional it can be at times. So I don't think he's going to struggle that much with that. And like I said, like any of these great 10s or creators from wide, like you think of Hazard, for example, a player like that, they embrace physical contact because they've got the skill, the speed of thought, and the low centre of gravity to wriggle out of those situations. Two men come and press him here. He dives in between the middle of them. The next player comes in. He embraces it, knocks it past them, and then look at all of the space that opens up. He wants to get into there. You've got a clever run here from, I think that's Poulsen, and then that just opens up the gap for a Pender, and Simons can just place a lovely through ball into him. Again, when you talk about the intensity and the physicality, one thing that Leipzig always wanted to do is counter-press effectively. This is that game against Bayern Munich where Harry Kane didn't win the league, actually, in the end, when he was watching it from the sideline. Leipzig chasing the game late on. You can see with the players that are committed in that final third, the pressure that they are putting Bayern Munich under. Really aggressive press. It's Simons, the one that jumps in and tries to win that ball back. He puts the player off. I think it's Geertruida who is able to get behind Koeman there, win the ball back. And when you counter-press effectively, as a team like Leipzig can do, and that's exactly what Thomas Frank wants Tottenham to do as well, you need to have quick speed of thought in terms of when you turn the ball over. Poulsen gets in there, nicks that ball. It falls to Xavi Simons. You've got players here who are all kind of almost all in each other's way a little bit. Simons just takes a touch, does it so quickly. Poulsen makes that run, and he's able to find here what is such an excellent pass. Oh, hold on. If we get rid of that. What is such an excellent pass through to Poulsen to finish it. But it all happens because Simons does it so quickly. That's the thing. When you press high and win the ball back, like we saw with Tottenham against Man City last week, you've got to make those decisions quickly. You've got to act fast before that team get back into shape to recover. And that is what Simons does so well. They're threading it through to Poulsen to score. Outside of the box, you see Simons come into the game as well. He's alive in and around it, but you can see him here on the edge. Cutback comes, and again, you see such an excellent example of his clean ball striking right into the top corner. Again, here, a lovely goal from Simons. Look at the cushion touch to bring this down. His cushion touch to kind of bring this down under pressure between two players and get it away and move forward. You can see here, wriggles away from them. Little bit of combination play. Sesko kind of gets out of his way and he drives into this space, lovely space, and just curls it into the bottom corner. Such an excellent finisher. And again, just to finish off that little bit of magic, this ends in a brilliant Rabona cross, right? It's just that ability to draw in tight spaces. And one of the things that I wanted to move on to after this is how he obviously fits in. Can he play out wide when Maddison comes back? Absolutely. He's very good at operating in these kind of wide channels, although I think you want him, for the most part, operating in central space. But we'll talk about how they both fit in. Here, playing the game at his own pace, slowing it down, committing the fullback so he can use that burst of pace to get away, forces the dive in from the fullback. Again, it's no wonder why he draws so many fouls, gets to the byline, and it's a Rabona cross to get it across. Just that little bit of magic, that little bit of stardust is just exactly what Tottenham need. But it's so much more what Frank needs from his number 10 as well. He wants them to kind of drop deep and create this space in behind for players to run into. We saw that with Mikkel Damsgaard at Brentford, like kind of peeling off that last line, peeling off the striker and kind of allowing that space for players to run into and playing direct balls. But also, you want Simons to pick up the ball in these deeper areas and drive forward with it and through the thirds. That's what he does so effectively. Such an excellent player. But how does he fit in then? You'd imagine straight away comes in, plays in that number 10 position, absolutely no problem. We know that while he's fit, he's going to be playing there, linking up well with Richarlison. I think having Simons and kind of Kudus in that final third is just scary for teams because we know how many players it takes to stop Simons when he's on the ball. No wonder why he draws so many fouls, etc. But it's the same for Mohamed Kudus as well. You've got two really robust players in that last attacking line that need players around them, which then opens up space for other players like Brennan Johnson to run into and kind of target that space in behind. But also it frees up one of these two players, Kudus or Simons, to produce a moment of magic, right? But say, for example, we kind of fast forward a year a little bit, because I think we know enough about Simons now to know where he's going to fit in the immediate kind of short term, right? He's going to play in that number 10 position. We know what he's about as a player. But in terms of Frank's different systems and then evolving over time, where does he kind of fit in when everybody's back fit? Now, obviously, we know that Frank likes to switch between systems. We know that at times, obviously, he wants to play a back five. So if we bring Kevin Danso into the mix here, right? Kevin Danso kind of slots into right-sided centre-back. One of these midfielders has to make way, or one of these forwards has to make way, sorry. So Johnson, you could see kind of coming out, and you could see maybe a midfield kind of two of Sarr and Paulinho in there as kind of the base of that midfield. And then Simons and Richarlison kind of operating a little bit like we see at Palace and Man United as kind of two dual sort of number 10s behind the striker, and then your kind of width naturally comes from your fullbacks or your wing backs in that instance to kind of get up high, get around them to allow those two number 10s to kind of burst into those spaces and do the damage where they're most likely to inflict it, kind of in those pockets, especially for someone like Xavi Simons. So that is one way that you can kind of see him fitting in. But if I want to talk about when James Maddison is back as well, and I want to revert back to the first game of pre-season, actually, under Ange Postecoglou, Thomas Frank. Under Thomas Frank, again, we see so much kind of pragmatism and adaptability in terms of his systems. Now, one thing that we saw, if I get rid of this player highlight and just take this off the players here, one thing we saw in terms of that setup was in build-up, what we saw was it was Danso and Romero, I think, who played in that game. But if we go with kind of what our best first 11 is, we saw them kind of playing as the centre-back pairing, with Udogie as the left back and then Porro as the right back. What we saw in build-up a lot of the time was Spurs kind of moving to this elbow back four, where you've got Van der Ven and Romero, you've got Porro kind of tucking in as a third centre-back in the build-up, and you've got Udogie kind of playing more as a wing-back. So you kind of see the elbow here, right? You kind of see what I'm talking about, this line, and then Udogie kind of pressing on as that left wing-back, looking to get forward, to get round the left winger that day, who was Mikey Moore. Now, this is where Xavi Simons comes into it, right? Doesn't really matter who you play in the base of that midfield. It doesn't really matter for this example. But if we bring James Maddison into proceedings here, this is where things can get quite interesting. Obviously, you can play Kudus here. You can, in the number 10 as well. You could play Kudus out wide. But say, for example, you want to play a game maybe where you want to, because of the compactness and kind of the lack of width on the left-hand side, because you've got Simons as the left winger, kind of operating more in this sort of pocket here, right? You need a little bit of width, so maybe you bring in Brennan Johnson in on this game to kind of hold the width on the right-hand side and do what he does there. Obviously, Kudus is absolutely fine for that as well. But in that sort of game, what we did see against Reading was Alfie Devine in that number 10 position, but quite often he'd go out to kind of receive balls in this pocket, playing through the lines kind of on that right-hand side, and it allowed Spurs to then play with two number 10s, with Mikey Moore kind of playing as that left winger, but because Udogie is going up and round him, getting into this space. And then you've got Simons, Mikey Moore, who can come and drift inside a little bit more and drag that ball from the touchline and get into these areas where he's super dangerous. And then you've got Maddison as well, to offer that kind of also that threat and that ball progression. He can drop a little bit deeper to kind of get those balls through to Simons and vice versa as well. And then on that right-hand side, you've got Johnson that can hold the width a little bit more. Again, you can play Kudus there as well. So that's one way that I definitely see that Simons and Maddison can work together when Maddison is back. He's obviously the replacement for Maddison for the short term, but you can definitely see Simons operating as that left winger in certain games next season. Maybe when you're trying to undo a low block, you want as much creativity on that kind of last line as you can, with Simons and Maddison dovetailing quite nicely as these two number 10s. I think the relationship that they can kind of forge together is really, really special. But also, I think one thing when you're kind of trying to undo a low block is what you need is kind of as much rotations as possible. Now, Spurs are obviously, if you take Kudus and put Kudus back in here, or maybe put Odebear potentially on this right-hand side, for example. If we get rid of that, don't know how that's happened. We get Odegaard in there, for example, right, just to freshen things up a little bit. Now, often what you want is if Spurs are playing against a low block that are kind of squeezed high up the pitch, you get Sarr, you get Paulinho, you get Romero kind of on that halfway line as well, trying to make it as compact as possible to be able to counter press effectively and just pin that team back. You want Porro kind of out wide for those crosses in that half space, but also dovetailing with a winger that wants to come inside as well, so we can put Kudus back in there. You've got a lot of creativity on that pitch, but we know that Spurs are kind of trying to target another winger, right? Savinho is the dream in terms of that 1v1 threat, but if you can't get someone like him over the line, then I do like the idea of kind of going for another goal scoring option in Lookman. But if you've got Simons as kind of playing as a left winger in these kind of situations, it doesn't really matter if you haven't got that 1v1 threat continually. As long as you've got Maddison and Simons who are happy to constantly kind of rotate into each other's zones to kind of create that chaos, to move teams about as much, make you so much harder to pick up, so much harder to track. They can produce moments of magic off the cuff, whether it's shots from outside the box like we saw with Simons. But if you've got that kind of fullback in a Doggy or Spence that's kind of out wide, holding that width, stretching the pitch as much as possible, it allows Maddison and Simons to rotate so nicely in these pockets to try and shift that team about and break them down. So there's definitely a world in which they can live together, and the same applies for Dejan Kulusevski as well. It's really nice that we are building a squad that can compete in all game states, on all fronts, with the depth that we've got as well. Having that depth and that competition massively raises the floor of this squad. Having someone like Simons with that superstar, Stardust quality raises the ceiling of it as well. I'm so excited. I'm so excited by this signing. It moves me so much. Can produce moments of quality. Is such an excellent ball carrier. Can break down low blocks. Is so helpful in transition as well. Is so clever. Can ride challenges. He's just got so much, and he's the best option on the market. And I can't believe the Spurs have done it. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like it for me. Subscribe to the channel as well. We're so close to 15k, and I'll see you after Bournemouth, where hopefully Spurs make it 3 wins from 3 in the Premier League under Thomas Frank. Nice one.